Boom. What up, fam? Anthony Dream Johnson here today, founder of the 21 Convention, 22 Convention, 21 Studios, 21 University, co-founder and CEO of the Redman Group, president of the fucking Manosphere. Here today with episode 124 of the Redman Group, the masculinity of politics. I'll be joined by three amazing guests, maybe a fourth throughout the show. And it's going to be a very good time, very good chat, and discussing the very obvious shit show that we're seeing in American politics right now. It's going to be a lovely chat, very lovely time. Before we get going, word from our sponsor, 21 University. Boom. There we go. You can go to 21university.com right now to get early access, ad-free, censorship-free to all videos from 21 Studios, including the 21 Report you see there from Pat Stedman and George Bruno. New episodes of the Redman Group Live we filmed at 21 Summit. New speeches coming out from 2020. New speeches from 2019 we still haven't published on YouTube yet. A lot of good stuff. And make sure you check out the App Store on your iPhone or Android phone for the 21 University free app. Comes with a free 1-month trial to the university, and you don't even need an account to actually use the app. You can watch some free speeches from speakers who've died, guys that we have eulogized, I think would be the right word, because they spoke and now they're dead, so the speech is always free, no account needed. With that said, after you get your 21 University app on your phone, please come back here to the Redman Group and welcome Michael Foster, Pat Stedman, and Mr. Steve Brule, all returning guests to the show and alumni speakers of the 21 Convention. Welcome, boys.
What's up?
Hey.
What's going on?
Great to be here. Great to be here.
Oh, yeah. What's going on? Yeah, I mean, holy shit. Not too much, The news has been pretty quiet lately and all that, So who wants to kick this off? The floor is open to anybody who wants to just run with it, because son of a bitch, this has been pretty wild week.
Well, I'm happy to jump in on that. As we just about started this, we found out about an hour ago that Joe Biden officially was declared the winner by the media as the president of the United States. I tweeted this out right before we started, but this is absolutely hilarious to me. And I know people they don't get it because they still, for whatever reason, even people who know the media has been lying for the last 4 years, they still get themselves in their panties in a twist when they hear this. They are so backed into a corner right now. They know that we have so much evidence on them of committing fraud, from manipulating early vote totals in computers, from, of course, printing out fake ballots and stuffing the ballot boxes afterwards, from registering dead people or from voting for dead people on the rolls. I mean, the amount of fraud is so unbelievably overwhelming.
Yep.
And so they're in their last position right here, which is that, it's all chips and on a bluff. They don't have any cards. They're just going to say, all right, well, we're going to win this. And they're going to hope that they can use the public intimidation. The purpose of them doing this right now is to try to have the public believe that Biden won, and then they can justify sending their brown shirts out onto the streets to harass and terrorize things. They're probably going to try to take down the power grid at some point in the next week or so, but none of that stuff fucking matters, because in the meantime, you have the evidence going to the Supreme Court, and you have an enormous case being built. So you guys know, you've been seeing me the last couple of days here. I'm really just blown away by how weak so many people in the manosphere are, mentally just completely weak. And they cannot handle the fact that something that was entirely predictable is happening. Can't handle the moment.
Yeah, I got to say, Pat, I love your show, man. You and Tucker Carlson are my favorite shows to watch, dude. I call it the Pat Stedman Show. Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Michael, Steve, you want some opening comments on what you've seen over the past couple of days in American politics?
Sure. Pat and I are very much on the same page here. I've been watching folks just roll over, and I'm like, of course they're going to say they won. They're going to do that as cover for everything. They need to suppress you, to break you down, to think that we're not winning. But the reality is, what happened is Trump won in a landslide, and he had so many votes that they didn't cheat well enough. And that's why they had to pause the votes, because they had to figure out how in the world are we going to still win, because Trump had so much going for him that they had to think on their feet, and they're doing a terrible job. Right? They're going to get caught. They're leaving footprints everywhere. And it's crazy. We've got all sorts of whistleblowers coming out saying, yeah, they're telling us to, date these ballots. And there you've got how many votes where it's just Biden and they're not voting anyone down ticket.
Yep.
They're going to be able to uncover this stuff. And this is what Donald Trump is made for. I don't know.
Yes.
He's made for political drama. He's made for lawsuits, and he can't be ashamed. And that's the thing. Even though I don't agree with a lot of Donald Trump's morality, the thing about him that makes him there's a lot of things that make him powerful for right now, but these guys that try to silence you by shaming you, that doesn't work on Donald Trump. And that's exactly how they've silenced the Republicans in the past. And so Donald Trump's like, yeah, that's who I am. He just keeps on going. And I've had people trying to shame me. Oh, so you're going to vote for a guy, would you want your daughter to marry Donald Trump? Like, I would want my daughter to marry someone with his level of masculinity, but I'd want him to be more moral. But no, what does it have to do with anything? This is the party that wants to shut down the economy. This is the party that wants to shut down churches and say they're unessential. This is the party that wants to deplatform everyone that disagrees with them. This is the party that wants to take your kids away from you via CPS, let them be raped in the foster care system, intense abuse. And then when that kid has issues and says, hey, I think I'm a chick, let him have his genitals surgically removed and given estrogen. No, I don't want these people in power. They're terrible, terrible people.
Yeah.
And we're seeing them terrible by trying to steal the election. Trump is standing against that. So whatever you want to say about his economic policy or this policy or that, he is one of the few things between us and people that are absolutely insane. Yep. And so thankfully he'll stand his ground. He won't be shamed into silence. And we should have more of that fighting spirit. But people are used to getting their butts kicked. They're used to being losers. And you just see it online like, oh, it's over. Like, because CBS says, what do you watch on CBS? Who cares about CBS, man?
Most of the manosphere seems to support Trump and stand with him now pretty strongly, but there is a wing that's weak. And I think that's why they also suck with women. Yeah. Whatever is going to happen is going to happen. I have my own beliefs about it, and everyone here does too. And I'm very confident that it'll turn out very, very well. But at the same time, these guys they're such pushovers based on basically bullying by the media. This propaganda is a form of bullying at a really high level in a really dangerous way. Mm-hmm. And they bend so easily to it. And that's why women walk all over them too. And that's why they suck with women. Women hate that and they don't respect it because it's dangerous to breed with you if you're that huge pussy. They have a pussy. They don't want on a pussy. You know what I mean?
The beta runs deep with these guys. These guys, Trump is, they've got a weird relationship with them. Like they look up to him because he's who they want to be, but they also resent him for that reason.
Yes.
And so these guys are so used to losing, and these guys are so used to being agreeable. This is the whole nice guy thing. Yep. And like, well, let's just go on with it. Like, no, that's not how you win in life and business or anything. Like you pivot, you find a way to make it work. Well, these guys are always thinking through just their agreeableness that they'll be given the things they want. That's not how it works. You take it. It's a fight. It's dominion. That's how business works. That's how life works. And these guys are incredibly weak. And they have, like Pat's been saying, they have zero frame. They're just breaking and freaking out. I'm not freaking out, right? Even if they somehow pull off this theft, which I don't think they will, I'm not freaking out either. Like I have a plan. I'm going to still win, but those are my opening thoughts.
Good. Let's move to Steve Brule. Steve, you're Canadian. You're not American, but I think you love freedom and the West very much. What are your thoughts on the attempted communist takeover of the United States? Not to blow the question too much.
Well, this was the topic of my speech or lecture or talk at the 21 convention. In fact, leading up to exactly this, what my concerns about Democrats winning are laid out there, and that this is part of the overall drive for a one world government, which will be communistic and which will be dominated by radical feminism. So, and there's a lot of things to be concerned about in that. And one of the things that strikes me right away is about this election is that whether or not these lawsuits succeed in revealing voter fraud. And overturning this or at least coming out a fair election, what we're seeing is that despite the Democratic Party lying through their teeth, manipulating like crazy, supporting lawlessness, undermining the police in their efforts to maintain the peace, in spite of them supporting Black Lives Matter and Antifa riots, the absolute burning of courthouses and public places, destruction of your history, the lying about history in the 1619 Project, the tearing down of your monuments across the country. In spite of all of this absolutely insane, lawless crap, a significant portion of the people still vote for Biden and the Democrats, and they're behind it.
That's a really good point.
Well, thank you. You've got a big problem there. But there's a couple of other points I just want to throw out for discussion. This started before the last election in 2016. And there's a fellow, I think his name is Robert Epstein, a statistics professor or something like this. I put the link in the private chat. You can have a look at it. Excuse me. But he predicted, and using mathematical statistical models, that Google's ability to persuade the vote by lying, by search engine, basically lying using their search engine bias, can swing 15 million votes. Excuse me, I don't want to cough straight into live.
Sorry, I pulled up the article for you.
Yes, this is well worth reading. This is not flaky stuff. This is solid scientific analysis, and it's being ignored by the left, of course. But Google is, everybody knows this, of course, it's no secret. All of big tech is pushing for one world government, and that's why they're behind the Democrats. They want a one world government for reasons that I touched on in that presentation. The other thing that comes to mind is that COVID-19. Now, I don't know about the viewers or this audience or what you think on this, but this is a scam. The COVID-19 is a scam. It is a very weak virus that happens to have a very targeted group of vulnerable people who are elderly with multiple comorbidities. But this has been propped up to such an enormous degree, creating massive fear with such great success. It's incredible. And this fear of being infected by COVID-19 was used to justify ramping up the mail-in ballot scheme. And in New Jersey, they tried to have all mail-in ballots, 100%, and several other states tried this same thing, even in spite of the fact that they were called out and proven that the mail-in system was used to fraudulently influence previous elections in New Jersey. There's an example in Patterson itself, in a small election, just for some judges. But there's other examples across the board. Also, a point of note, in 1864, the Democrats tried an elaborate scam using mail-in ballots to prevent Lincoln from being re-elected.
Yep. So
there's a lot to be concerned about here. So we have to encourage the lawsuits to go forward and for the truth to come out, and then we're all going to have to live with the truth. I'm not convinced we're going to get the truth out. That's my biggest concern, and that's because the Democrat Party is the party of liars, cheats, and thieves. There's no way around that. It's a party of liars, cheats, and thieves.
They're still the establishment too. I mean, they've been their wing of politics has been going off the rails for decades. And they can still control all the media is filled with hard Democrats, more or less. All of it. Even Fox News, they were kind of leaning this way in general, but it wasn't until election night all of a sudden that they really did a hard turn.
Well,
like full fake.
I want to just throw one thing out. Sorry, just one last point. It's a very short point. The point of view of a Democrat is results. So it doesn't matter to them. The end justifies the means. Yes. It's the opposite with Republicans. Republicans have an ethic of personal responsibility, and that prohibits you from going. That kind of ethic prohibits somebody internally from going down the road of the end justifies the means. And this is a fundamentally different worldview that we're dealing with.
Yep, Ayn Rand talked a lot about this. Yeah, she railed on it. Pat, Michael, you guys have some comments?
Yeah. So a couple things. So first, just with Fox News has been subverted for a long time.
Control opposition, basically.
Control opposition. I mean, there's a lot of stuff about Murdoch's children and their wives, and sort of, that the management of the organization has been gradually going this direction for a while. There are a couple of commentators, people like Tucker Carlson, of course, Lou Dobbs, Sean Hannity, who are not, I guess because they have big enough platforms, they've been able to resist. But you guys remember a couple of years ago, they were trying to get Carlson off the air. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that's really kept him on is that he's so popular that
even this year they were trying.
Yep. They try all the time to try to get rid of him. So the organization's been compromised for a while, and it makes perfect sense that they would use Fox to do it, because everything that they're doing is demoralization campaigns. That's it. That's all of this stuff. That's their objective. They know they can't win it through anything unless we give up. If we actually hold the line, and if we, have some will, then they're not gonna. They're screwed. They're absolutely screwed. And this is the other thing I wanted to make a point about with guys who, are rolling over with this stuff, or who don't understand the significance of this. On a policy level, Trump is, of course, like kicking Biden's ass across the board. I mean, you probably couldn't produce a worse policy platform if you tried. That's pretty much Biden's thing, is that, you can stay inside we're going to keep you in your house for a year. We're going to ship all your industry overseas. We're going to forcibly, allow your children, if you try to stop your children from getting gender transition when they're 8 years old, there's like, we're going to intervene with that. I mean, you couldn't really produce a worse, completely open borders. Like, you couldn't make a worse policy position. But what people don't seem to understand, like you hear some idiots. I mean, really, I have to think that they are either brain dead or they're completely compromised individuals. Talk about like, well, Republicans will be able to, get back in the midterms and run against them on. It's like, what world are you living in? Do you have any idea what's going on right now? Like, even if this has nothing even to do with tax policy, even though Biden will raise your taxes, that's not the issue here. The issue is that it's a communist revolution of the country. They are trying to completely destroy this country. You steal an election, you stuff ballots. Where do you think, what do you think happens in the midterms? You don't think they're going to just do that in every single election? You don't think they're going to just pack the courts?
If a sitting U.S. president can be removed through a legitimately fraudulent election, there's nothing to stop them in the future. Of course, like they're going to steal it in 2022. They'll steal it in 2024. It's like an abusive relationship. If your wife, if you have a wife and she cheats on you, what's going to happen in the future? She's going to keep cheating. If you let your spouse, husband or wife, hit you with a closed fist, what's going to happen? They're going to keep fucking hitting you. When you let a pattern of abuse start, when it's so egregious, this isn't like a little fight, like you're saying. It's not like, taxes higher or lower. It's a sitting U.S. president being fraudulently removed from office through election fraud and errors and glitches and all this bullshit. This is really serious. This is the unseating of a commander-in-chief of the military of the most powerful country in the world through like seriously fraudulent means. This is massive. It's fucked, like, permanently.
And Anthony, and that's why when people are like, well, there's not going to be, when are the arrests going to happen? There's not going to be any arrests. If you like tamper with like a couple ballots, you'll get sent to prison for 20 years. Like, this is, I mean, I think we can debate about the details of, how much stuff was like baited beforehand, and, what are the methods of which, the things were baited. To what degree was this a very intentional sting operation versus something that they were expected to do and traps were set? We can debate about that, but it doesn't matter. The enormous amount of fraud that's been committed, and that's provably committed. Yep. I mean, these underlings, these who have been sent to do a lot of the manual work, they're going to flip when they realize that you're going to go to prison for life for this. And they're going to be like, oh no, this guy told me to do it. It's like, all right.
You're just coping, Pat. You're just coping.
I'm just coping, right.
We gotta pause here. We got to bring in the Sultan. Welcome, the Sultan of Silver, George Bruno. How you doing, sir?
Beard. Hey there.
Yeah, beautiful beard. George, you want an opening monologue here for what your experience has been with the American political system past couple of days? What are your thoughts on that? How's your experience been? What are your feelings?
Facts don't care about my feelings. Let me put it that way. You are entitled to your own feelings, but you're not entitled to your own facts. That I kind of live by that. I was a fan of Trump in the 80s. To me, he's not a reality show star. Like everyone said, I can't believe you have a reality show star as your president. I'm like, fuck off, asshole. Trump was fucking building shit and creating jobs and babies long before he was on TV. Okay? So this man is not used to losing. He plays to win. He's not a reality show star. He's not a fucking politician. He plays to fucking win. He doesn't know how to lose at all. I have zero worries. This man is not going down. He will take this to the Supreme Court.
I hope he takes it past. I hope he does whatever it takes to stay in office, to be honest. I made that announcement on my Twitter the other day.
Yeah, I believe that. I do not believe, like, for instance, New York Post, yesterday? A downcast Trump speaks to the media. I'm like, oh, will you fucking just stop it with this downcast bullshit? Stop it. He's not downcast. He's playing you like a fucking fiddle. And right now, we said this 4 years ago. The guy plays 4D chess and he's 5 moves ahead of you. He doesn't. Politicians play. There's only 2 options with politicians, and that's win or lose. Okay? He's not a politician. Okay? He's not done draining the swamp. I think he's got to get over this hump, which he doesn't view it as a problem. He views it as a challenge. And that's what all positive people do. They don't call their problems problems. They call them challenges, because it's something that, in other words, this threw a gauntlet down for him. This is not like I guarantee you he's not losing sleep. I guarantee you he's not losing sleep over this. This man is energized by this crap. Energized from it.
He loves
so
fighting.
if you see him at the podium going, well, we're going to take this as far as we can. I do believe Pennsylvania and Wisconsin are, like, you think that's a depressed Trump? You're used to the rally Trump. This guy is so far ahead of any pundits. So far ahead. I will be completely surprised if he has to leave the White House. Completely surprised. I honestly believe he's going to be there another 4 years. And I think as men, what my experience is, every woman in my life is flipping out right now. Friends.
Yep.
Every single woman is panicking right now. And what we can do as men is say, relax, babe. You know, it's going to be okay. She is looking at you, and I'm not saying you guys, I'm speaking to men. She is looking at you as a man and watching you react like a little bitch. And then she's getting nervous and anxious because you're all pussied out. And I'm really sick and tired of that, because I did a video last Monday called Reacting to the Election is Feminine. And that I encourage everyone to respond and not react. And of course, I probably lost about 200 subscribers with just that video alone. And that's fine, because the house cleans itself. I think if we remain strong as patriots, listen, we've been promoting MAGA for 4 years. MAGA's not going away. The patriots are in control, and there's a lot more going on than what we see. That's what I think of what's going on the past couple of days.
Thanks, George.
I have 2 things I'd like to say. I got 2 quotes for you guys. These are the 2 issues that I think we have to, for the Red Man Group, these are the things that we got to red pill people on. So the first one is from Psalm 55. This is says, his speech was smoother than butter, but his heart was war. His words were softer than oil, yet they were drawn swords. This is hard for people to realize, that people that are smooth are often tricking you, that these guys, that you have to look beyond the words and to what's their intentions and what they're working at, and that's really hard. In particular for evangelicals. Evangelicals are so naive and they take people at face value, which makes no sense given our theology, where we believe people are born sinful. I could understand that coming from other worldviews, but not from that one. But anyone that's been around knows that people don't, like, someone's going to rob you. They don't say, "Hey, I'm going to rob your house when you leave tonight." That's not how it works. I mean, people, they conceal their speech. So we have to look beyond their speech. Trump understands that because he's lived in the world of business, and that's how it is in business. So one, we have to help people see that the media is lying, and that you have to like actually look beyond the words and not fall for smooth, flattering words. And the other one is from a really good political commentator, Victor David Hansen. And he said that if the left wins this election, they're not going to be magnanimous, right? He says they're going to want to hunt us out and eradicate their opponents. That's what cultural revolutions always do, and they'll do it again. Like, that's what's up. These people are like acting all nice and acting like we're the bad guys, right? It's like mass level gaslighting. And once they win, and again, I'm with all y'all here. But if we were to allow them to win and not stand with our president, they are absolutely coming for us. We've seen all sorts of MailChimp mailing lists shut down. We're going to see a mass canceling. Trump is the one that's keeping these guys in check right now, because they know that if they start canceling lots of people, especially big names, that it's going to get him all revved up. So these are the things that we have to open people's eyes up to. Yeah, exactly what this crazy chick's talking about. Coming out after us. Is this? Are you going to surrender to these people?
Let's be more specific too. There's another link around her Twitter, and it was getting promoted around elsewhere. They were building a huge list of Trump supporters to go after.
That's right.
To de-Trumpify America. It was huge. They had before they pulled
it. They warned us about this when they started the cancel culture in general. Yeah. So this should come as no surprise. This has been growing for 10 years in our culture, and it's been growing from these very people. This idea that you have to shut down and cancel people who disagree with you. That's exactly what they're doing. And it does, these things all have a trajectory. They have a momentum about them, right? Like you were referring to, Michael, that they get to one point, you think, okay, well, it won't get any worse. No, they have a momentum. They're going to keep going in that direction. And the end point of that direction is not just to silence you and kick you out of society. It's to take away your life. You know, that's the end point of these kinds of authoritarian, totalitarian movements.
I think the end point is they either want you to think and act exactly like them, like a zombie, not a sheep so much as a zombie. Like, if you don't think like them, then you have to die. That's where this is going. They want to control. They don't want to just control your life and what you say. They want to control what you think. They literally want to control your internal thought process. It's insane. It is super Orwellian and super dangerous. It's exactly like the USSR and Nazi Germany.
It's a spiritual warfare. They want us to worship the government. And so all of us here fall different places, but we all will agree we're not worshiping the government as God, right? That's not happening. And that's what they want to do. And the opportunity that we need to see, this is a chance to wake people up. It's in their face. This is a chance to not be the guy like, see, I told you, that's not this time. The time is like, this is what we've been talking about. Do you see it now? And then we can like motivate. So the good part of MAGA is people that don't buy into liberal narratives anymore. We can add to that number right now because they're so sloppy and they're in our face. And if we just keep staying strong, people are attracted to strength. People are looking. You got to be the alpha that betas go around. We got to give them shade. We have to help lead them, and with the hopes, unlike some of our critics who want to keep them weak, we want to move them from being that weak man to being a stronger man. This is a chance to give those guys the guts that they're lacking.
Yeah, and you see the same phenomena, I think, in the manosphere that you see right now in the wider, not the wider, but the Republican Party and all these dudes, right? The rhinos versus like the hardcore people, the MAGAs and whatever. The manosphere is kind of the same thing. You see guys who kind of LARP masculinity, that role play this stuff. And I know some of these guys in real life, and they're just total frauds, like total fakes. And it's super. But online, there's other guys too that are much more masculine that I know in real life too, like you guys. And there's a big difference between those two. There's real integrity versus like this fake front. Yeah, so seeing it in the GOP right now, the Republican Party, is pretty interesting to watch. It's the same dynamic playing out, the same battle. It's like these fakes and these phonies and these frauds and these rhinos, and then people who are actual patriots and actually believe in limited government, actually love the founding fathers, and they're not just giving lip service to it on occasion or just outright denying it. They really believe in it. And the manosphere, it's the same thing with masculinity. It's guys who really believe in masculinity and really believe in, reality, really care about the truth, versus people who will just role play this stuff and try to bully people around with it. Truth with a capital T, that kind of bullshit. So yeah, it's fascinating right now to see all this stuff, man. It's a propaganda war and a psychological war. And he called it a spiritual war. I mean, I'm down with that too. But yeah, it's a war of words and a war of minds right now. It's a whole
MAGA
right now is what's going on.
MAGA is bigger than Trump.
That's true.
It's much bigger than Trump.
But my concern about that, though, hang on, is that it will never have a chance in the future if Trump loses this election. This is massive. Like, if you can steal the MAGA, he's definitely the MAGA king. We could call him that, right? Psychologically, and the founder of it in the modern form, even though it was said by Clinton and Reagan and stuff. If you can remove a sitting president through legitimate election fraud in a general election, that's a banana republic. We no longer live in anything resembling a constitutional republic at that point. At which point, I think you need to defend the country from domestic enemies. That's where this is heading at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd like to say also, I don't think that they know they're not going to win this. Their hope is just to turn it into some sort of civil conflict, and that delegitimizes Trump's presidency, because they know Trump's not going to give it up, and they know that if he doesn't give it up, especially because he controls, Republicans have a strong majority on the courts, they know they're not going to win this stuff. But the point is to create as much confusion as possible that it seems like Trump doesn't have a mandate. That's the thing that people don't get. I mean, they don't understand what their playbook is. They don't understand the enemy. They keep saying like, oh, it's going to be fine. We'll just get it next time. We'll keep, fighting with this in the future. It doesn't work that way. They don't even believe it themselves.
Yeah. They're
just hoping that if they can create enough conflict here, then China's going to have massive, massive advantages. Like, you'll probably see them attack Taiwan, because the U.S. is going to be basically distracted in some low-scale civil war situation. But I want to emphasize this over and over again. Trump has the evidence. He has the control and support of the military. He has the courts. And he has the majority of the population, overwhelming majority, if you actually get into the details of how he won this election, like the popular vote margins that existed prior to fraud.
Yep. And
it's the heavily armed part of the population. Okay, so wherever this goes, like, people, it's completely psychological. That is the only advantage that they have, is they have the propaganda mouthpieces, and they have social media. It's the same thing.
To add to that, Pat, too, you can tell that even the GOP knows this. And I'll give you a little bit of evidence. Is Donald Jr., he only had to put out one tweet to say, where's the GOP? Where are these guys at? Where's the 2024, president? And people reacted, right? Lindsey Graham gives them 500,000. These guys know this is not over. These guys know that, because those folks, they like Trump as long as he's useful. And if they could be done with them, they'd be done with them. But if that's their attitude and Donald Trump Jr. just pushes a little bit and that gets them to jump, they know that he's at the very least still in it. And folks should be looking at this. Like, folks that are in the know, watch how they behave. Forget their words. This is like, this is one of the things we talk about in the manosphere. Look at actions. The actions, like, that's what we're doing. Like, they're sending all these people onto the street to celebrate. Everything's a setup.
This is a really good point. Look at the media. It's their words versus their actions. Their actions are that they're scrambling and freaking out. Their actions are Fox News turning from controlled opposition to just fully controlled, not even fake opposition at that point. The actions are they've been pressing, even last night. Biden had the opportunity to claim a fake victory. He didn't do it. He did it later today, finally, when the media got even more behind it. But I think the media I think the reason the media waited so long and didn't go even sooner is they're worried about Trump actually, following through on basically destroying the credibility, what little they have left, like absolutely just demolishing it. And now when Trump wins, it's going to be like the biggest fuck you it'll be a much bigger fuck you than 2016.
Yeah.
Like that's, yeah, I think that's why even, when Fox News called Arizona and then, everybody got mad and shit, the other news outlets didn't call it. And they were kind of looking at Fox like, what do you do? Like, it's just, I mean, it's probably all game anyway, but it was interesting that you didn't even see CNN call it and these other, news outlets and stuff, the ones that you would expect to be leading the charge on that kind of stuff. They instead left it to Fox News to do it. And everyone's like, yo, what the fuck?
We like to say clown world or bizarro world or upside down world because literally up is down, left is right, black is white. Everything is just kind of like the opposite of what it appears. In the movie 1984, which you have to see the movie, it's on Amazon, it's on Netflix, it's probably on demand on your cable. The one scene where everyone's eating lunch and they're facing a screen, where they're being indoctrinated, and one guy has a bowl of soup or stew, and he says, "There's not a piece of meat in this stew." And then he got pressured. Everyone looked at him, and he said, "Boy, this stew is good." You know what I mean? Like he just changed his mind like that quick because of pressure. Everything that you see now, everything that you hear now, 100% is a psyop. Everything. Yep. Everything. In Europe, right now, in Poland, that's my reference, there are people freaking out. And I am the link to sanity right now when people from Poland are reaching out to me and saying, is it as bad as we're hearing? And I'm like, well, what are you hearing? And they think it's just, and I said, you have to stop listening to your news outlets. You have to stop. Pass that on to your friends. What you're hearing is not true. It's not true at all.
They're just trying
I am not. Listen, if you keep saying, literally, if you keep saying 2 + 2 = 5, if you say it long enough, there are people who will believe 2 + 2 = 5. If we keep hearing Biden won, Biden won, Biden won, there are people that are just going to say, oh, Biden won.
Yeah.
You know what?
Which means there'll be a revolution on the streets if the courts overturn the victory, the so-called victory. Which I do want to make a point is that we don't really know yet who won. So it's unfortunate, but we're probably going to be sitting through a couple of months even of these for all of this stuff to go through the courts. And if there's a recount that will slow things down and maybe multiple recounts, there might have to be, I don't know, there might have to even be another election, though it's never happened before. It's not off the table. Nothing is really off the table. But what concerns me more is that even if Trump is successful in proving the fraud and reverses the results and remains president, we still have a huge problem. And it's the same problem that we had before the election, that these elites are going to continue to press forward with the one world government. One day, I think they will win that one world government. We have to be prepared for that day.
I don't think they're going to win because I think a civil war will happen before that.
The civil war won't stop the one world government. I
think it will.
Yeah. Sure. If they don't take America, they're not going to be able to pull it off. The thing is, it's not. There's no way the one world government, the new world order is done. Like that's not happening because we've already hit a critical mass of consciousness. If Trump's not going to concede the election, so even if let's just say that something happens on the Supreme Court, this is not what's going to occur. But let's just even hypothesize for a second that the Supreme Court rules in Biden's favor. Trump's not going to, and the Supreme Court drops the thing. Trump's not going to back down, and he'll mobilize the population. We will have a civil war in the country, and the military will support it as well.
It's a possibility, but that still is not going to stop these globalists. These globalists are enormously powerful.
Steve, I respectfully disagree. They do not have much power anymore. They are in a really, really bad situation. They have been put on the back foot over the last 4 years, and this is like their last card that they can play. They're trying to steal an election because they have already lost the mandate of the population. People are aware of them all over.
I hope you're right. I'm not convinced because these people have been at it for a very long time. In fact, the push towards a world emperor has been with humanity since we settled in villages and started to create a garden. and it's been a big push since World War II. All of these globalist institutions are there. They mirror national institutions in the globe already. The infrastructure is there just to pull them together.
Yeah.
I'll give you a positive part of this so here's I'll strike the middle. Steve, I think those people exist and they're attempting this, but I think Pat's right. And I'll give you some example of how they failed. Is that I read an article 15 years ago that went viral on how Hollywood was trying to normalize pedophilia, and I was like, it was too early. It got me in all sorts of trouble. But that's well known now, right? You can go deep on the QAnon side of things, but if you don't go deep, like no one denies that anymore, that things like that are going on. People are aware of that. And in the evangelical circle where I've been on the fringe for a long time, the whole Overton window has shifted where people are listening to me that even 9 months ago wouldn't have listened to me. They're seeing like, I'm not nuts. Like I know history. I've been reading this stuff for a long time, and I know what we're seeing now is nuts. I'm not the fringe. Now is the fringe. I'm normal. And these people are suddenly opening up to it. So we're watching to continue the theme, the huge portions of the population be red-pilled in different segments. And for that reason, I think these guys have made a massive mistake. I think they went too hard, too far, and it's going to blow up in their face. And everyone's like, well, I don't know about that. Why? Look at it. Look at all this evidence. It's all right there in front of you that this is not going to work out. Like, we all know exactly what states they did it. We're starting to know exactly how they did it. And we have a president that's not going to roll over. Why won't we win? Because other things are corrupt. Well, if you have that loser mindset, roll over and die. That's what I would say. But
I'd like to add one thing in there,
sure.
though. I don't think it's a loser mindset, what I'm preaching here, if you will. I
didn't mean that totally.
Yeah. No, but no, that's okay. That's okay. I believe in making your most accurate assessment of what you think is coming and then preparing for that. And although I believe that we're going to have to face a one world government, it's not going to last forever. It will fall apart, or it will be defeated eventually. But I think that the will amongst the people to live with self-determination is not there strong enough yet. They'll have to see what it is really like to live under total world domination before people will rise up and fight back for their self-determination in a nation state type format.
I have a little bit different take on all this. So regarding with what Steve just said here, I don't think it's impossible for a new world order, one world government to take over. I do believe Trump is going to win this current battle, and I think America is on a very positive path still. So I'm not convinced that what Steve is saying is going to happen, nor am I convinced that it's impossible. I think that would be very naive to think that this battle is unlosable. Just as naive as to say it's unwinnable on the short term and the long term. And I think Steve is mostly focusing on the long term, bigger picture, which is a separate issue sort of from the short term major battle that we're facing right now and that we're seeing go down in front of us. My concern, if a NWO one world communist government ever took over, which I think is the plan and it's what they want and it's what they've been fighting for, is that you would not see. I don't think you would see what Steve is saying. I think you would see genocide. I think you would see the next dark age get ushered in. So I think that's what we're facing: is the next Enlightenment or the next dark age. And what is Agenda 21, 2030, all this crap? They always say it's always about killing billions of people, and I believe that. That's what they actually want. They want to kill, just like in the last century. A couple 100 million people were killed by their own government in the 20th century. 250 million or something crazy like that. Not victims, not combat deaths and wars and stuff. They were actually killed by their own government. Germany, the Soviet Union, China. China alone killed the communist government. They killed, 54 million people? Minimum. I mean, it's insane. And we haven't seen that level of genocide yet this century, but I think that is what's on the table at a bigger scale if this stuff isn't stopped. So my concern is that if they got that, you would just see the next dark age for a couple 100 years. It wouldn't be like a battle. It would just be, that's why it has to be stopped through any means necessary.
I still see the U.S. as the beacon of hope, regardless of which way it goes. I think that, I don't have to keep repeating myself on the one more government thing, but what you have that's unique in the U.S. and what is important is written into your Constitution is your right and duty to bear arms and rise up against internal threats. That is an American mindset. Even though some of these leftists have lost their way, they're Looney Tunes, they think they're going to have a fairy godfather who's going to take care of every need in their lives through their communist government. There's enough people who still hold to that American ideal of self-determination and refusal to submit to a oppressor from outside or in. And you're well armed.
Yep.
That is really hard to change. It was the reason the Japanese didn't invade, because every house has multiple guns. So that's where I see the holdout for hope for humanity, that very fact.
Yeah.
Just to clarify too, I think short term, I'm very positive. Long term, I think there's much conflict and crisis for us to go through. So when I was talking about a one world government or whatever, not having a victory, I do think Trump will win this. Long term, moving forward, I expect us to balkanize, frankly.
See, I'm the optimist here. I think that after this stuff comes out, I mean, everybody's focused on this right now. Everybody is completely focused on this election, and they're focused on what's going on. And right now, because the media said all this stuff, the media has declared, that said Trump, that there's no evidence of fraud and that Trump just won't concede the election. Everybody's going to be paying attention to the Supreme Court. And they're going to be watching the entire evidence of this. And everybody's eyes are going to be glued to it. And you are going to see tons and tons of people within big tech, within media organizations, and of course, within the Democratic Party, go to jail. And we already had a bunch of people wake up from the COVID bullshit, which is still ongoing. But a lot of people woke up this past spring because of that. This is going to create a whole nother second wave of awakening. And I really believe that with the disclosure that's occurring, by spring of next year, you're going to have a solid 75% of the public, maybe even 80%, are going to be deconditioned, deprogrammed.
Sounds like an American spring, Pat.
That's what it sounds like. I think it's going to be an American spring. I think that Trump has had to walk a very thin line with this, and this is what people don't get. People will say with Trump, well, why didn't Trump do this? Why didn't Trump do that? Trump could have been very brute force and blunt about this stuff, and he could have, brought us to a civil war, and then we would have had balkanization, and he would have had, people who supported him, and there would have been people who are still programmed. But the entire purpose of being patient, he's been giving them enough rope to hang themselves, and then creating the opportunities for people to pay attention to it. Like with COVID, like with the riots, people were like, the riots are going on in the cities. Why doesn't Trump put it down? He wanted to let people see and develop their own opinion about the riots rather than fall into the predictive programming that the media has put out about him being a fascist. So I'm actually very optimistic about this. And I think that a lot of people, people have been paying attention to the ballot stuffing. They've been paying attention to the stuff that's been going on. And even if they supported Biden, there are a lot of, centrist Democrats who are very uncomfortable with what was going on. They're very uncomfortable with the entire process. They might be like, okay, well, I guess I'm happy Biden won. But they were a little bit unnerved by what was happening. And so once that evidence comes out, you're going to start to see people bailing en masse.
Yeah. I think what's amazing with Trump, I mean, my confidence, I have a very high confidence in America and our legacy and our momentum. We have a tradition of freedom in America. And, Steve brought up with guns, that is like the pinnacle of it in a physical kind of way. The First Amendment is important too, but at the end of the day, it's a Second Amendment that America was built on the justified just use and retaliatory use of force. George Washington didn't talk the British down, he shot them. And at the end of the day, if that's what happens in America, well, first of all, it's what happened to start it. And this country has survived since then pretty well. And I think that's a big part of it. You can't bully around America. It doesn't work that way. In other countries, you can because the population is unarmed. So at the end of the day, if they want to do something very, very Orwellian, very murderous, very genocidal, you don't have a lot of options. But in America, we do.
And that's another point, just to jump off that real quick. America was founded by people who broke away from this group.
Yes.
And so they created a system that was designed to have multiple fail-safe mechanisms because they knew it was going to get infiltrated. I mean, that's when Jefferson talked about, the tree of liberty is probably going to have to be watered with the blood of patriots again. And so they created two, bicameral legislature, which had a third of power versus the president versus the courts. And then they had, freedom of speech and then the right to bear arms, because they knew that even if you infiltrate every single layer of the government, the population's armed, then they can't do it. Then you can take it up by those means. So this was something that's been, they've been trying to do this for a long time, and they've been gradually sinking their teeth in. As Steve was saying, they have had complete power for a very, very long time. But in the last couple of years, it's been, especially, there have been people who have been waiting to deal with them, waiting to, seeing it get worse and worse. And I very much believe that we're in the end game for them. So I'm positive. We just got to deal with the tension and keep people's spirits up.
Yeah, for sure. I think I've been on it on Twitter, like a lot of you guys, just after this stuff, on it. But I want to add that Ron Paul put out a saying, I don't know where he got it from or if he invented it himself. He probably got it from somewhere. But back in 2011, 2012, he said that tyranny sows the seeds of its own destruction. And I never forgot that. Tyranny sows the seeds of its own destruction. And I think what we're seeing right now is an illustration of that. I think 2016 was an illustration of that. And I would even say that the libertarian argument that they've been making for decades and years, that the presidency and the executive branch was overpowered massively, way above and beyond, with executive orders and all the Congress basically dumping their authority over to the executive branch, things like that. That is why the presidency was so important to get in 2016 for a real independent American who was not controlled by the party system, was not controlled by anyone. So basically the presidency was super overpowered. And I think that's why it's so important that we got it and to keep it. And it's one of the ways they never expected to lose control of the executive branch ever. That was like so far outside. That's why they got arrogant. And that's why I think in 2016, they didn't rig the general election. They thought they could just rig the primary, and then they ran out of time to rig the general. So they're like, fuck. Now this is a different battle in 2020, and I think a lot of people are surprised by what they're seeing, but they shouldn't be. And that 2020 was never really going to be a 2016. It just wouldn't happen the exact same way. But at the end of the day, I think Trump will win. Trump was born for this. This is the story and theme of his entire life as an individual and as a man and as an American. He goes through a lot of shit like this. This is not new for him. This for him is basically par for the course. And his ability to deal with it is sufficient. And I think he is going to win. And he loves the fight, and that he'll fight and win. We have to wait and see. None of us have a crystal ball in the future, but that's my belief about what we're seeing.
Trump is different than Bezos. He's different than Musk. He's different than Mark Cuban. These are newer billionaires who came up in a different era. Trump is a New Yorker. He is a roll up your sleeves, and it's kind of like like when people piss me off, I say that to my face, because I am a get in your face, roll up my sleeves, let's fucking duke it out. That's how Trump is. You'll notice he's not a master orator. He repeats himself. As a speaker, I look at his speaking style and sometimes I go, oh gosh, did he really just say that? And I'm not putting him down, but that's not his strong point. His strong point is what he does behind the scenes and what his intention is. And he's a street fighter.
Well, hang on.
He doesn't come across as being smooth.
I want to disagree on something. Him repeating stuff, I've noticed that a lot too. I've seen him do it at rallies and press and stuff. In my understanding, that's actually a positive sign of a skilled speaker. I'm not saying he's perfect, and all that. Obviously, his style is very abrasive to a lot of people, and it's polarizing, so that has its benefits and its drawbacks. But in terms of just specifically repeating stuff, generally that's a sign of a good speaker, in my understanding. You don't, if you say it once, it goes over people's heads. If you repeat it, you drill it in their head. That's why the media does it. They're repeating everything a million times a day now.
Well,
every night.
He goes off of the teleprompter and adds his own he adds his own comments. I mean, there'll be a sentence that he reads off the teleprompter, and then he'll go off of that and just give his own like little commentary, which I get that. I understand that. And I think that's what a lot of people, that's where a lot of people accuse him of double speak and this kind of stuff. But the reality is, he comes from an America that's different than what's going on right now.
Yeah.
This guy shows up at job sites with a hard hat on. That's how he bought real estate. He's not a digital wizard. He's old school. This guy is not like the new billionaires are. To me, they're just video gamers as far as I'm concerned. Trump is a roll up your sleeves kind of guy, and he's a brawler. And that's what he does. When he was doing the whole WWE thing, that to me, that was just kind of like a humorous picture of what he really does in real life. There's a reason why Vince McMahon would have Trump on Friday Night SmackDown or whatever it was. It was a metaphor. Why didn't they have on anyone? Can you imagine Bezos going on WWE? That ain't going to happen.
Yep, there's no masculinity to him. Pat, did you have a comment?
And Cuban is nothing but just a little bitch. He tries to control people with anger and smarminess, and that doesn't work. He doesn't produce. He just has a bad attitude.
Most billionaires are just fake and controlled. Pat?
And there's a thing I'd say about those people is that a lot of them hate Trump because they're compromised themselves. They took deals. They got blackmailed. They decided to take the easy, or they're in on it. But I mean, when we look at the number of truly evil people who are involved with this group, it's not a huge number. There's not a huge number of people who are on the inside, but they blackmailed and corrupted an enormous amount of other people. And those people hate themselves. They hate themselves because they know that they're weasels. They know that they have no backbone, that they basically sold out to try to be comfortable. They sold out to evil in order to be comfortable. And so Trump triggers in them not only because Trump is much more masculine than them, but they also know that Trump had the courage to do what they couldn't do. And you see that, Trump has pulled some people who were a little bit afraid. He created, gave them more courage because courage is contagious. But a lot of these people, I mean, whenever you see them say something, it's just a complete tell about their own involvement in the schemes. And that's the thing I'm looking forward to is you have all these people who produce the same shit over and over again, and they're promoted by the platforms, but they're actually they're losers. They're losers. They're not good people, and they're only in the positions that they're in because they took deals.
Yeah,
I think
go ahead, Steve.
I think one thing about Trump, first of all, this whole MAGA movement, like you presented, you mentioned earlier, Anthony, is not about one man, although he started it. I don't think we need to put all of our kind of hope in one person. What he's done is shown that there's a different way to be a politician, and you can be successful without being a career, smooth-talking, Teflon, sleazy, used car salesman politician. That you can pull off putting harsh truths right in people's faces, and you can stare it down. He's showed a new pathway forward for a lot of people. I think you're going to see a lot of new blood recognize that and start building their own courage and their own brand, radically different from traditional politicians of the past.
Yeah. My concern is it's just the I think this is accurate and true what you're saying, Steve. My concern is just the inability of any of those people to win an election in the future, specifically due to voter fraud. If they can do it, it's such a high. It's because they're doing it. It's always existed. I mean, elections have probably been being stolen forever. I mean, this is nothing new. This is a fact of history, and it's not uncommon. But to see it at such a high level against an incumbent president, not a new
Huge.
candidate. It's not like 2016 when you had two new candidates going from different parties and a president was out due to the Constitution and you can only serve 2 terms. This is massive. This is a coup. This is
And they're getting better at swinging this stuff. I mean, that professor's analysis of the Google shift of 15 million votes, that one manipulation alone might have shifted this election. That one manipulation, not even talking about the mail-in ballots and all the other crap that's going on.
And these are people who want communism, slavery, and death. These are the people who want to now make lists. They want to round people up. They want to de-Trumpify you. They want you in re-education camps. They talk about this openly. They want you at the end of the day dead or enslaved, and that's where it's heading if we don't stop it.
So, agreed. And someone was asking me on Facebook, well, what are you going to do about it? Is it just empty Facebook posts? And my point to them was like, well, first off, it's propaganda that got us to this point. This Facebook post isn't empty. What are you talking about? Like half the battle here is just keeping you guys awake to what's going on and telling you the truth. And so, no, words are warfare. Now, this is how we engage in this. This is where the Christian pastors, social media is a dirty business, man. Sometimes you say things, you kind of feel like an ass later. You're like, why did I do that? And of course, it's the thing that takes off too, like goes viral. It always has a typo. If I'm going to go viral, there's always a typo. But these guys have like removed themselves from this, and all their people are being stewed in this propaganda. And part of this is pushing back. And what this tells us is that we have to like take election night. I was trying to find someone good to watch. And eventually, the only one that was good at all was the War Room with Steve Bannon. Everything else was terrible. I watched Fox. I was like, this is miserable. And I'm like, some friend told me, hey, check out the War Room. And I went on there, and it was really good commentary. It wasn't like MAGA, MAGA, MAGA. They were very honest about what's going on. We're going to have to create, no matter what happens, why something like 21 Studios matters is that we have to create new channels of media. Media is incredibly important. And so these people that are trying to they're trying to shame you. Oh, you're just talking about it? No, that's part of the battle.
That's why they want to control it. They want to control information and the complete flow of information. That's how you enslave a population and collapse it. I mean, the media and big tech. Look at Trump's been censored 20 times in the past couple of days, and not only him. It's spread now. It was it was mostly him a week ago or two, and a little bit of other people. And since then, it's been it's escalated times 100. Everybody's getting censored. All these these big conservative personalities, Mark Levin, all these guys, Rand Paul, sitting U.S. senators, sitting congressmen, sitting U.S. president. I mean, this is insane. Lincoln back in the day, he ended up closing down a lot of newspapers by force. And I think at this point, I would support Trump closing down the big media right now, instantly, immediately, all of it, shut it all down. Mm-hmm. That's how aggressive they have been. They are so compromised and so aggressive and so anti-American and so anti-free speech. These people are in on it. These people are beyond shills. They've committed treason, in my opinion. They're colluding with an election fraud of a sitting of general election.
It's 100% treason, Anthony. 100% treason. I mean, it's going to be provable in court that these people have taken. That there's gonna be a connection, a paper trail connection between the media outlets colluding and polling outlets colluding with media groups, with the DNC and with big tech also being in on it to censor certain things. It's all the NSA has a dragnet. Okay, we can collect all of this information and it has been collected.
Dude, it's just metadata, dude. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's just metadata.
It's metadata, man. No, it's so let's pause here and let's talk about something bigger picture. Independent of what happens over the coming days and weeks, what are the odds of the United States avoiding a civil war within the next, say, 5 or 10 years? I don't know if that's even possible at this point, given how, like Steve was talking about, it's not just election fraud. There's millions, in my opinion, I think it looks like there's been millions. Look at Biden's popular vote. This is ridiculous. This old decrepit corpse he got more votes than Obama did.
Yeah, right.
This is absurd. This is beyond absurd. You should be angry at the severity of the lie. But also, there's still millions of people that actually voted for Joe Biden. Holy shit. Hillary, at least Hillary had ambition. At least she wanted it. Piece of shit candidate, nasty woman. But she had the ambition to be this power-hungry, whack job. And I don't think she had dementia, even if she was a little fucked up. But Biden is just a total clusterfuck. Like, that anyone would vote for this guy is pretty. They'll say the same thing about Trump, but Trump doesn't have dementia. I mean, fuck, man.
People voted for the Democrat Party. They didn't vote for Biden. Let's get real. And they voted thinking that Kamala Harris might end up being in that seat. They know that there would eventually be some kind of switcheroo.
No, a lot of them didn't know that. Like, we knew that. The Trump people knew that. I don't think a lot of Democrats knew that. They actually believe this bullshit.
Here's what I believe. All right, regarding your comment about Civil War.
Yeah.
Are we getting some like weird audio right now?
Yeah, I don't know where it's from. Let me turn mine on.
Okay.
Check it. Let me see whose it is.
Checking mine here.
Yeah, it's Steve. It's your audio. Just mute it when you're not talking.
Let me try. This has happened to me before. This stupid mic.
Yep. Just mute your audio on
Still
here.
there?
Yeah, just when you talk, just unmute it and it'll be fine. George, go ahead.
Here's my thoughts about Civil War. We are in a civil war right now. For instance, I remember 30 years ago, Christians in China literally thought that they were in what people call a biblical tribulation. Like they thought it was the end times. Literally, they thought it because there was crap happening in China to believers in China who were doing home churches. Doors would get kicked down. These people would get dragged out, thrown in prison, many shot. So for them, it was real. When I look at a lot of more prophecy-oriented Christian preachers who would say, we are now in the end times, and then they could point to this and this and this happening. And it's almost pretty darn convincing, although I'm not one of those guys. But to the guy that just got his head smashed in about a month ago with a brick, to the Trump supporter that just got shot 2 weeks ago on the street, to the store owner whose store just got looted and burnt to the ground, yes, you can't tell them we're not in a civil war. So it's kind of a like how did like I'm a big Civil War buff guy. I got bit by that bug maybe 2008, 2009. Went to Gettysburg, went to all the battlefields. And even the people in the war. And I remember going to the museum and reading the letters that were found in dead soldiers' pockets, a letter that they wrote to their girlfriend, to their wife, to their mom, that kind of thing. Those young men didn't even know why they were. It wasn't like, pray for me, I'm fighting to free the slaves. They didn't even fucking know why. They didn't even know why they were aiming guns at guys with different color uniforms.
Yeah,
okay.
They were
History
shooting at cousins, man.
Yeah. Literally, brother against brother. So what gets me is this, is that historians are gone. The media is the new historian. I don't believe a single fucking word I ever read about Lincoln. Not a single one. I believe nothing, absolutely nothing that I've heard about the Civil War in my lifetime. You got to go and you got to dig and do your own research.
Yep.
You have to do it. So, as far as why we're doing this, I would say, like, out of the past 4 years, only this year did we say, have you been hearing people say, oh, this is not about Republican versus Democrat. It's about what? Say it.
America? Freedom?
Say it.
Tyranny?
No, it's blank versus blank.
You mean like
evil versus
Boom!
good?
There you go. People weren't saying that before this year. Actually, I think we only been hearing that like for maybe about the past 6 or 7 months. It's really good versus evil. This has nothing to do with parties. And my attitude completely changed when that sunk in. Completely. The media, who are the new historians, are lying about, like, do you remember, who was it? I guess it was, I'm not sure where the source was, but I know they did represent this concept well in the movie Gods and Generals, which, if anyone has ever seen that, just rent Gods and Generals and then Gettysburg. Just watch them, get your popcorn out and just watch it. And it's going to blow your mind. But I'll never forget when Lincoln wanted to recruit Robert E. Lee to lead the Southern Army, and he declined.
You mean the Northern Army?
No, the Southern Army. He declined. Or was it the Northern Army? Hold on.
Northern
Army.
Army.
Northern Army.
Yeah.
Northern Army,
Yeah.
right? He declined, and what happened was, in the movie Gods and Generals, he goes, I never thought that I would see the day when a president of the United States would form an army against his own country.
Yep.
And that's what we have right now. Biden and the Democrats have created an army that's anti-American.
Yep.
And these people that are taken to the streets with the purple hair and the freak show, pretty much the liberal progressive freak show. These people they got about maybe 3 talking points. That's about it. They don't even know why they enlisted in this army. They don't even know why.
Yep.
And you know what? They're just going to fall like tin soldiers. That's what's going to happen. Because they're unfocused, they have no idea what they're doing, and literally, the media is now hyping this up like they are historians. We have to unplug everything that we're seeing and hearing right now is a psyop. Absolutely everything. I'm not the one who wants to go to war. I don't want to go to war. I'm not interested in going to war.
I think that's why it hasn't happened yet. Real Americans who love America, they don't want to see that. I don't want to see it. If I have to fight for my country to defend it from communists, I will. I don't want to see that happen, though, at the end of the day, but I will. I'll do whatever it takes to defend this country. I swore an oath to, like everyone else that's ever done anything like this.
Foreign and domestic. That's the key. That people, every cop, every person who takes office, every politician puts their hand on the Bible, and that's part of the oath.
You even have to take an oath in Florida at some voting places. I didn't see it this year, but in 2018 they had this. You had to you had to sign an oath on this, just like that. Yeah, but it's super serious. But I think it's Americans. Scott Adams talks about this. I know Pat has mixed feelings on Scott, and I'm not too far from that. But he's talked about this. Americans handled like the BLM stuff really well, very reserved. But people are fucking angry. They're fucking more angry now than they were 6 months ago. They're really angry. Everyone I've talked to, including normies that are not typically that super political and nothing with the manosphere, they're very, very, very angry. And I think the country, not only now, but in recent months and years, there's been a tipping point crossed with polarization to the point that people are saying it's good versus evil. And, they'll always, these losers, these betas will say like, oh, you're over the top of it. Oh, it's not that bad. We're all Americans, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, communism is not American. This is fundamentally anti-American. It's anti-freedom. It's pro-slavery. It's slavery for everyone. Not based on a gender, not based on a race, none of this bullshit. It's for everyone. And then it ends up in gulags. These useful idiots are the ones driving it. Yeah, these in the streets. These are useful idiots, all of them. 100%. BLM, Antifa, all this stuff. Or they're just actually, true believers, and that's why they're so useful to the idiots. And then at the end of the day, they get killed too.
Do you remember what Stefan said at Patriarch last year when he said the depersoning, the unpersoning and the deplatforming is the precursor to murder?
Yeah,
remember when he said that?
He said cancel culture is a rehearsal for murder. I think that's what he said.
Unbelievable.
He's right.
That would have been great. He's got a lot of good things to say about that because he's taking an aerial view of the whole situation. And God, I'd love to get him on here again.
I think a lot of the Canadians do. Like Steve loves America, but Steve is not an American. You're Canadian and you live in the Dominican Republic, so you have a little bit of an outside perspective on it that we don't. We're in the middle of this shit.
And what's going on in Canada is terrible too, but it doesn't make as much news as the American politics.
Yeah, no, I watch it up there. Yeah, it sucks, man. It's brutal. Michael, Pat, do you have any thoughts on America being able to avoid a civil war? We're not advocating here, obviously. We're just theorizing, but I don't see how it's avoidable at this point on a long enough timeline. It's been 155 years since we had one, but is it going to go on forever with that one? I'm skeptical.
I mean, I don't think that that's going to happen, or you could redefine it and say it's already happening. The Civil War is almost over. This war has been a psychological war. You could, because wars progressively moved more and more into these realms. So early on it would be just physical fighting, and then propaganda and psychological operations became bigger and bigger. By the time of the Cold War is pretty much entirely a psychological war with a couple hot conflicts here and there, sub-conflicts. But for the most part, it remained psychological, which is one of the reasons why the military continues to transition more and more to special ops, because you need special ops in targeted strikes for specific kinetic actions. But mostly speaking, it's the propaganda outlets that do most of the fighting. General Flynn talks about us online. It's on one hand, it's kind of like, if you look at it from one perspective, you can be like, well, maybe this is a little bit lame to call it like this, but it's actually true that we are digital soldiers in a certain sense. It is a war for your mind, and it's a matter of persuading in that realm. Now, if the 4D breaks down, then it does descend into 3D. It does descend into kinetic action. Yeah. But I don't think it's going to happen, because I really think that they've dug themselves a big hole. Even now, in terms of the truly radicalized portion of the population, there's a lot of like young women in particular who are in this, who aren't really very useful in the Civil War. But we're only talking about like 35 to 40% tops of the population that is really in this radical state. We have on our side, there are much more people who are in favor of Trump than are in favor of the propaganda, and who have not been radicalized into sort of this communist position. Yeah. So I don't think that their base is very strong. I think it crumbles pretty quickly. The people and let's also be real about what are the demographics of people who support this stuff. I mean, most of the Antifa people, I remember this was someone, I think, screenshotted this couple months back. Like, one of them had a post that said, "A fascist train today, did you?" And then they got trolled. Like, well, they didn't get trolled, actually. Their own people said, you can't be body shaming people. And, it's like, these guys are absolutely useless. And the only thing that they have is, there is funding. They have been backed. And, I'm not saying that you wouldn't see any hot conflict in the event that this did boil over. I just don't think it would last very long, because the armed and strong part of the population, including, let's remember, 90% of combat units are not at all sympathetic to communists.
Yeah.
So
they hate all of it.
Yeah, they hate them. And like, they should be actually kissing Trump's boots, the fact that Trump is going about it this direction. Because if he decided to just like unleash the military on them and declare an insurrection, they just get wasted. Yeah. They get wasted in 2 seconds.
So what I would say is, I don't know what's going to happen in terms of a civil war. I think we should make preparations, but we should also realize how different of a situation we're in right now. So, for example, no one's self-sufficient. We can have our electricity cut. We can have our food chain cut. Our ability to communicate, we depend heavily on electronics that are easy to disrupt. So the form that warfare will take in the future is quite a bit different than in the past. And that's why these folks that want to move out to Montana, I'm always like, look, if you're fleeing the government, they'll just send a drone out and bomb you. Like, I don't know. You think they're going to drive tanks up into there? Where do you live, man? Like, wake up to how things have changed. Yeah. So what we can do, though, is we can become more self-sufficient. We can I think localism is something we need to focus on. We need to get into, I always tell people, look at a city that you live in and say, could I turn this into a city state? What sort of influence do you have there? So for me, we're moving to a smaller county with the goal of having deep influence there, not like a hostile takeover, but by finding like-minded people and actually getting some power in the government and just normal power through relationships. So I think it's a huge vulnerability. Something that mitigates against it is the fact that It's really kind of interior versus exterior, and urban versus rural. So it's very how the war would break out. The geography of it doesn't lend itself. So it's going to take whatever it is. It's going to take a different form than it did in the previous Civil War. It's going to be, and that's some of that we can like this. We have to sit here and think like, what would that? You know, I had this moment years ago where I realized everything I own, someone else made for me. And it was kind of a crazy thought. Like, I can't make my own clothes. I can't make my own food. You know, I'm not a big hunter. I don't like shooting animals. It's gross, man. I don't want to pull their guts out. I don't know who enjoys that. But I started thinking through all the things that I can't do. And so one is just getting basic skills back, basic confidence back, actually knowing your neighbors, actually having, I mean, the fact that you can have your whole library deleted. Knowledge can just be deleted right away. And so we don't even have analog books. So I think I have a friend, he does prepper stuff. He does conferences. He's a prepper. And he always says he's got these big fat guys come in with their guns. And he's like, yeah, you got a gun, but dude, like, you're like super, super, super fat. Like, you're not going to survive. You know, like, wake up, man, once you lose some weight. So I think we all should really see the writing on the wall that unless there's a total victory here and we just crush their spirits, which I think is unlikely, that there's instability coming in front of us for the next several decades. And what can you do to build a local stronghold where you and your family and your friends have a level of protection is what I would urge people to think about.
Yeah, I mean, even you mentioned the next several decades, but even the next several years.
Go ahead.
Even if Trump, with Trump, if he wins now and falls through and all this, then I believe that's what's going to happen now. We're in the stages of that happening. They're just going to delegitimize his presidency 10 times worse than 2016. Instead of saying Russia stole it, Russia, these paranoid schizophrenics about this shit. Now they're going to say Trump stole the election. He stole the Supreme Court with Amy Coney Barrett, and then he stole the election. And that's going to be even, because now it's a more direct line to attack him than blaming it on Russia, and he's a Russian puppet. Mm-hmm. Now he's a dictator who stole the Supreme Court, who stole the election. He didn't win it. He had to steal it with the lawyers. The lawyers did it, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, it's just going to be nuts, man. Like, I think it'll always be, there's no way if a major conflict happens, it'll look like the last one in 1800s. But I think it's coming. Like, I don't know how it's going to be avoided at this point. George?
Yeah, two things. I remember having a conversation at the 21 report with Michael Foster. He was talking about sharpening the axe, but look at your friggin' arms. You know, it's like if those arms don't look like they can swing an axe, there's a lot of guys sharpening their axes, but they don't have the arms big enough or strong enough to swing the damn axe. So we got to take care of ourselves. That's number one. Your war starts with your own personal PT. Number two, Terrence Popp, talking to him, when he was talking about the war on fathers and men and stuff like that. And he says, we're using Civil War type, weaponry against modern warfare. When we talk about Civil War now, is it going to be muskets and pitchforks and torches? Or is it going to be the grid going down? Is it going to be the water supply? This is a whole different war. This is not going to be a uniformed war, although we will, a lot of the quote unquote enemy it's pretty obvious. I mean, just look for the purple hair, but that's going to be one of the first things. But Biden came right out and said, I'm going to raise your taxes and I'm going to lock you down. And he actually got votes. Yeah. What the actual is that all about? He didn't allude to it. He said, yes, I'm going to raise your taxes. Yes, I'm going to lock you down.
Yep.
Holy crap.
That's why I think it's, if Trump, Biden's got supposedly, allegedly 74 million popular votes now. I would assume no less than 60 million of those are legit, maybe 65. I think there are millions of fake votes at this point, illegal votes, fake votes, all this stuff. But there's still tens of millions of people who support this crap. And the sheep syndrome, the sheep brainwashing is that severe in these people. They're that docile and they're that pathetic. I mean, there's no other way to say it. I don't care how much you hate Trump and how much you're threatened by him and blah, blah, blah. Biden was a massive loser. Like, holy fuck. Like, as much as I hate Hillary, Hillary was a more formidable individual threat, and people hated her rightfully so for that. Biden is just a massive, massive weak loser. Like, holy fuck. And to vote for this guy willingly is insane.
2016 was a real election. 2020 was not a real election, and that's why they had to go through this immense amount of fraud. Like,
the dude didn't even campaign.
No, he didn't campaign.
Like, holy fuck, this dude didn't even campaign, and when he did, he just says, "I'm going to raise your taxes and lock you down for 3 months and destroy the country." Like, holy shit. Yeah, fake election. It's a fake election.
It's a fake election. Fake news about a fake election.
Fake polls, fake news, fake elections, fake votes, fake all this bullshit. Fake candidate, yeah, like a Manchurian candidate kind of thing. Let's take one step back here. We've been going for almost 90 minutes, 85. Let's talk about, so the guy, I want to educate the men watching this. Talk to me about politics itself as obviously a foundation of civilization, men forming together to form governments, as the Declaration of Independence put it, to secure these rights. As I understand it, the family is the smallest political entity that there is. And then from that, men form governments to secure rights. Properly anyway, as we saw in America in 1776. So as politics, as the title implies, the masculinity of politics, is politics a man's prerogative? Is it a father's?
Absolutely. So the word economy is two Greek words that mean house rule, oikos nomos, right? And society is made of households, right? Households is the most basic building block, and the leader of the household is the father, is the husband. He leads it, and all society is built up of that. And so you can't. Politics are nasty when it gets bigger and bigger. It gets more and more complicated, and a lot of guys will pride themselves like, "Oh, I don't mess with that stuff." But look, that stuff messes with you. And in Scripture, the guys that sat in the gates were the respected elders of the town. And that's where, if you had an issue, you had a problem you wanted to work out, these are the guys you'd come to and talk about it. And these were the guys that help you make wise decisions. And that's the basis of politics, is when you have one house, you just got the husband, the wife, and the children, and the extended family working things out. But as there's more houses, it gets more and more complicated. So you create different structures to resolve things and to manage property disputes or whatever. That's all politics is. So you can't really be about marriage and family and the household and not be about politics. It's just, we're reclaiming that stuff that's been lost. And as we reclaim each, think of it as concentric circles. As we reclaim the bullseye, it takes us a while to realize just how much these other things are connected to the home. So yeah, if the man rules in the home, he's going to rule in the collections of homes, that is society. That's why, like, Christians, a lot of times in my circles, they'll talk about complementarianism. This is the idea that basically men rule in the home in the church, but not in society. Well, wait a second. Society is made up of homes. It's made up of households. So how is it that the man is the leader in the home and suddenly women are the leaders over all the homes? It's like very weird and just not true throughout history. So yeah, we need to learn to love politics, in particular local politics. And that's where it all starts. Guys need to be running for mayor. They need to get on community council or whatever and get involved and actually. Then you see it more tangibly affect your life. I think we all think at a national level where we have the least power and influence. Yeah. And so then it feels fake. And if a guy's masculine, like, he wants to connect it to the real world. And so you'll find a lot of some of the most pathetic guys are interested in power that they only could talk about theoretically. Like, they don't have any skin in the game. And I think if guys would get more into local politics, they'd have more skin in the game, and they would see it's actually very masculine. But they see all these guys. It's like, what's the dude in the guy that's always mad at Donnie in that one movie? He's got the gun. It's John Goodman plays him. He's always talking about political conspiracies and that.
Oh, I know the movie. I don't know the name.
What is it? The Dude Abides, that movie. Why can't I think of this? But that's what guys think of when they think of guys that are in kind of conspiracy and politics. They are kind of losers that don't have their life under control. And that is, when it's just about your emotions and it's distinct from any action. I get why they don't want to be part of it. So get involved locally. That would be my pitch for it.
Steve, you got to get going in a minute. Let's get Steve. Closing comments, Steve?
This is on politics, whether men
Yeah.
are better at it or natural at it.
Yeah, you could take that angle, or you could just, I know you have to go in a minute, so you could take that angle, or you could just speak more widely about whatever you want with the
I'll
election.
speak more wildly about politics.
Okay.
Briefly. I think, human beings are a social animal. And as soon as you are a social animal, you are involved in politics, whether you like it or not. It's part of being a social animal that, like, as soon as two people get together, you've got politics. Whether you like it or not, even in an everyday conversation, there's an element of politics in the sense that each person needs to judge whether or not they're pissing off their person, they're damaging a relationship they want to preserve, or whether they're forwarding their own personal goals or not. So yes, politics is unavoidable for every human being. You can withdraw from it and just be a victim of everything that flows around you, and just you're floating in there hoping that there isn't a shark that's going to eat you, but that's not a very good solution. So at some point, if you want to be an active member of your social group, wherever that is, you're going to be dealing with politics in some form or another. And that's, so politics to me is neither male nor female. It's a human thing. As soon as you're born human, interacting with other humans, there's a political dimension that comes in right away. And the same, just referring back to the previous conversation, there's an element of conflict, meaning conflict includes warfare, that comes along with being social animals, collecting in groups and seeking their own benefits. So when it comes to a war on a civil war sense, there's a possibility that will devolve into that. And I'm just going to arbitrarily stop there because I really do have to go.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for hopping on, Steve. We appreciate the comments and thoughts.
Thank you so much for having me on. Everybody,
Absolutely.
It's always a pleasure.
Yeah.
Ciao.
Yeah, so with politics, yeah, it's interesting to see these different perspectives on it. I love seeing, one of the things that I was thinking about too is I think George Washington was famous for saying that government is like fire. And I don't know the exact quote beyond that, but government is like fire. And it can cook your food for you, or that it can kill you. It can burn your house down and burn you alive. And so it's very dangerous. But the reason, though, is that government is not only fire, politics is force, and voting is force. And so I think that's what we're seeing here too go down. It's like you're seeing this conflict and, a very human thing. It reminds me too of Starship Troopers, which is a classic movie, a legendary
Great movie.
now, right?
Oh,
yeah. And there's a
great
book that's very different too that it came from. And there's a great, Sargon of Akkad gave a great review of this movie, this whole thing, the book and the movie. And there's actually a lot that went into the movie and why it came out the way it did. It's really interesting actually to look at. But it's a movie that I think illustrates, for whatever reason the directors had to put it together. But it talks a lot about this, that voting is force. Politics is force. It's violence. Your vote is a directive for the government to apply the threat or actual violence against other human beings through laws, law enforcement, lack thereof, defund the police, this and that. Like, it's super serious. And I think that's why, I'm against discriminating against, Americans, their ability to vote based on the way they're born. At the same time, I recognize that women getting the vote was not consequence-free, and that women and men are different, and they vote in different ways. And we see this very clearly in the voting patterns. Women vote for what they believe will make them feel safe, and they vote for what makes them feel secure, whether or not it will. And their emotions are driving, I think, a lot of what they vote for. Whereas men are much more truth-focused and evidence-focused and fact-focused and reality-focused. It's what we're designed to do. We have to kill the animal and hunt it down and eat it and then stay alive. So I don't know. This all kind of came to mind. George Washington's comments. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? Politics is fire. Politics is force. Government is fire. These issues. George, I know you had something you want to hop in there.
Yeah, I think I like the idea of what Michael says about getting involved locally. That's a big deal. And I think what I don't want us to do is to put on boxing gloves and fight the sky. Literally. Like, we need an opponent. We don't need a boogeyman. We don't need some giant, government. Like, how do you fight the government. You start local. Literally, even if all you can do is a neighborhood watch, and that's all you do, you patrol your neighborhood. That's a way of keeping your neighborhood safe, if that's all you can do. If you run for a town council position, something like that, that's what you can do. You got to get local. If you just stay government and fight the New World Order and this kind of stuff, it's an enemy you really can't see. And what happens is you get people like Biden and his type, and what they're doing is basically they are channeling this whole New World Order thing. So that's why he's got to be defeated. That's why these people have to be defeated, because they're not even lying anymore. It's like in plain sight. When was the last time someone said, a presidential candidate said, yes, I'm going to raise your taxes and I'm going to lock you down? It used to be this
Read my
weird
lips. No more taxes.
Yeah,
Hey,
exactly.
George, at least he's honest. At least he's honest about it.
Yeah.
Fuck
exactly.
your life up and burn the country down. Great.
Yeah.
Vote for me.
And then there's people going, yes, raise taxes. And to me, that's a good thing. Raise taxes. Yes. Woo.
Eat the rich.
That's that's like saying, wow, this stew is good. Boy, the meat in this stew is good. And there's no meat in it. But you were taught that there's meat in the stew. Raising taxes is not good. The reason why this country exists is if anyone ever read the Declaration of Independence, and I can guarantee you that 99% of Democrats have never read the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence, the biggest grievance was what? The first grievance was what? Taxes. I mean, come on. So the Tea Party had it all wrong, unfortunately. They just had bad optics. I understand where they were coming from, but it's a movement that fizzled out and just kind of morphed into libertarianism, which is still not a clear form of political stance.
Look at Jo Jorgensen. I mean, holy shit. Oh, she made Gary Johnson look appetizing by comparison.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But get involved local. Take care of yourself. Strengthen the arms. I'll steal it from Michael Foster. Strengthen the arms that swing the axe.
Yeah. I have another topic I wanted to bring up here for you guys. I thought it'd be a really good discussion, very relevant to our show, way above and beyond the wider picture. There's been a push in the manosphere for many years to like a hyper push, like a hyper apolitical push to keep it completely separate from politics, which is very, very different from what we just talked about, with politics being a man's game and a masculine thing, because it deals so much in force and violence. Oh, we lost Bruno. He's being censored.
Oh.
But do you guys have comments on that? No need to drop names if you don't want to, but there's been a very coordinated push. I think it's failing too, as the polarization picks up. But
I have a theory about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we run into this a lot in the church.
One more context drop before you start.
Yeah.
Feminism is the opposite. Feminists are super political. They're politically effective. They're not just in culture and in memes and influencing women's behavior. It's also super, super political, and they're super effective, which is very different from the manosphere collection of men and fathers. End rant. Please continue.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is it's because it's about not just theorizing, but taking action. I mean, that's what I run into with people, that they don't want to talk about it. It does divide, and these guys are brought together usually by their need for female validation, almost more than anything. That's how it comes across to me. But I think it's because to get involved in politics is to get deeply involved in society, and there's a sort of narcissistic drive. I think that keeps them from wanting to do that, and also it shows you have to have a more developed worldview, more thought than just like spewing out everything you stole from Neil Strauss and whoever else that you've been lifting this stuff from years. Yep. You see so many of these people, it doesn't really matter what type of guru it is. They're just kind of rehashing everything, and some of them do it better than others. But you find out that these folks don't actually they're not deeply educated. They're not deep readers. They just is what they say, when all you got is a hammer, everything's a nail, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it exposes their lack of education. I mean, it's wise at one level to not speak to things that you don't understand. But it's even wiser to admit that you don't understand it and it matters, and to start learning and having the conversations for the sake of intellectual growth, you know.
It's very healthy too. I mean, look at the Orwellian propaganda that we see from feminism, and then now look at the Orwellian propaganda that we see in politics and have seen for a while. There's always been, politics has always been, I think, dirty business. It's been very cutthroat. That's not new. This is not, a recent phenomenon, but the level of Orwellian propaganda that we've seen in recent years and in recent days is just unreal. Look at Twitter right now. The whole sidebar that I see on my Twitter feed, I could pull it up, is just propaganda piece after propaganda piece after propaganda piece. It is so intense. It is nonstop propaganda. It's everything trying to undermine Trump, everything. And it's the opposite of what you see as the reality. So it's the red pill versus the blue pill. And it's like feminists and, this crap. They want to pull the blue pill over your eyes. They want to keep you controlled. They want to keep you submissive and subservient to a narrative that they want to build where men are emasculated, women are masculinized, and you see this androgynous, depolarized culture of fucking gray NPC zombies. And in politics now, it's the same thing. You can look at the cyber now; it's nuts, right? It's all the celebrities now talking about going. They're celebrating Biden, blah 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 blah. It's the legal stuff. Won't do anything for Trump. Here's why. It's like just fucking endless propaganda. It's so sick. It's so disgusting. And if you don't see that shit, then I've no doubt you suck with women. Your ability to see through bullshit is vital to your life as a man. Otherwise, you're gonna get fucked. Just like all these people in history that have gotten fucked over by their government, killed.
I mean, exactly as you're saying, Anthony. Because and I'm not trying to. I don't want to go too far with this because some people will kind of just say that the left is. I don't want to get into like left is feminine, right is masculine necessarily. There's something there, right? There's something there, sure. But certainly the methods that they are using is classic feminine tactics, like gaslighting and manipulation, and really just, I mean, they'll just lie to your face over and over again. And these guys, they're completely blind to it. And I have to say this, I'm not going to name names. But I've seen, from people who I used to respect very much in the dating community, and I have on very good authority that their client base has become totally like bitchy, whiny men, like hardcore Bernie bro, sort of, Antifa, sort of supporting people. And I have to say, like, yeah, maybe you're getting some like grungy Antifa pussy, but like they're not doing well with women. Like they're totally detached from their masculinity. And I think that the guys who didn't stand up and take and fight, like you've been doing, Anthony, with 21 convention, who didn't understand that we needed to evolve in this direction. They're getting like dustbined. They're old news. All their little tactics or, even emotional connection stuff. I'm all about those things, but they're missing the bigger script, which is that there's no replacement. Like if you're going to fall for feminine propaganda tactics, you suck with women. At the end of the day, you're going to get run over by women.
Amen, brother. Amen.
My introduction to
I have said for years
George,
that
George,
go ahead. I have said that thug energy is feminine energy. Bully energy is feminine energy. Period. It's reactive. It's 100% emotional. It can be shut down like that. And that's all we have is threats. That's all we have is threats. And preying on people. I mean, when I'm watching a woman my mom's age getting punched in the face in a video by some lowlife.
I've seen that on video. Yeah, it's nuts.
And it's happened. It's happened. That's thug energy. And there's only one. It's like my father used to say, there's only one way you deal with that. And that's what the manosphere has to deal with if they truly want to man up. That is what they're going to have to deal with. You're not going to talk your way out of this. It ain't going to happen.
Let me make clear too. I will never, ever, ever support a candidate for president or governor or anything who is like Mitt Romney or John McCain or George Bush or any of these fucking scumbags. So this push we're talking about masculinity in politics, those people are all frauds. They're much worse than that. They're evil. They're fucked up in the head. They're corrupt to the bone. They're anti-American. They want to destroy the country, and we're complicit in it. So nothing. If you were looking at, I was in high school in 2004. Bush versus John Kerry. This is a total fucking sham. None of this has anything to do with what we're talking about now. And the same was true in 2000, and the same was true in 2008, and the same was true in 2012. 2016 was the first real election we had in America in a long time, at least since 1984. So I just want to make it clear, like, I will never be a shill for these fucking rhinos and these fucking frauds and these fucking fakes and these fucking losers and these fucking pussies. This has nothing to do with any of that crap. And I don't want to ever see anyone I'm around endorse that crap. And I'll be very combative if I do. Like, I don't like that at all. It's crap. It's 95% as bad as endorsing these fucking communists and shit and socialists. It's disgusting. Michael, do you want to comment?
Sure. I'll draw some connections here. So my introduction to Pat, I didn't know who Pat was. I didn't know who a lot of people were in this space like 2 years ago. But a certain guy did not like Pat Stedman at all and was railing against him. And I was like, what's this all about? You can't help it when someone's like warning you about someone, you want to go find out like what their deal is. So I started following Pat, and I follow people on and off, you kind of unfollow, follow. And I was like, I don't know, this seems like pretty good, pretty right on. I don't understand what this guy's problem is. Why does he have such a problem? And then Pat did this whole thing where he was mocking the red pill for a couple of weeks. It was great content. But here's my takeaway. It's very much like a woman that poisoned the well, to gossip and tear people down with words, and not let the best idea win, and not let they don't want there to be a marketplace of ideas because they can't compete. And that's how the left is winning right now. Their ideas are crap, right? They sound good on paper, but they never work, right? And anyone that understands the history and sees it or has any experience in power. And so how these things are in common is folks that are really good at talking and really good at packaging and flattering and kind of playing a particular narrative, like the narrative of fear, right? The black pill. That's all Joe Biden is, right? Though you listen to everything he does is fear. In the same way in the manosphere, there's guys that are like peddling fear and cynicism, and if there's anyone that says anything different than that, they talk about how they're purple pill or weak or whatever, and that's them because they can't actually critique the ideas, so they just use labels to kind of shut the conversation down. And that's the same thing you see in women. Men, what we do, we either beat the hell out of each other with our fists and come to respect one another. I mean, how many close friends did you have in high school that you got in a tussle with? I had quite a few. Yeah. Or you tussle it out through words and ideas and debates, and you come to realize where you're different. These guys don't do that. So if you want to talk about a feminine energy, there is a intense cattiness. I mean, what Vox Day would call gamma. Yes. These guys are like intense, and they're so mad that you don't recognize their superiority, how smart they are. Yep. And they can't compete with you in the realm of men because they're just really good at talking. And some of them have.
I want to add a comment here that I don't oppose labeling, classifying certain ideas if you're justified and you have a reason for it, like a train of thinking. I don't oppose labeling, classifying ideas as blue pill, red pill, purple pill, or black pill, or whatever, white pill, all this crap, right? What I'm opposed to specifically is labeling people as blue pill, red, all this stuff, right? That's a much slipperier slope. Super, super dangerous. Because
Make your case, right? Make your case.
It's infant-like, it's childlike to label people, to classify a whole group of people like that, at least in the manosphere, right? I mean, if someone's just a fucking open sheep, like I don't know, wearing a mask, getting on your knees and praying to literally washing people's feet in public now, like we've seen the past couple months, like you're a fucking sheep to the max. But unless you have some extreme evidence, claiming an individual is purple pill, red pill, blue pill is a much slipperier slope. And Richard Grannon, one of our speakers too, is very open about this as well at our Poland convention last year. So I want to make that distinction that it's different to classify an idea as something, a purple pill, blue pill, red pill, versus a person who's much more complex and has all this stuff. And that's why the attacks of Pat Stedman for being purple pill are bullshit. In my opinion, Pat Stedman is probably the world's #1 red pill dating coach. 100%. $1,000,000%. So
I heard about Pat Stedman for 2 years before I met him, and I'm glad I didn't formulate an opinion, because I don't formulate opinions of people based upon gossip. I really don't. And the person who was hammering him just this week agreed that young babies should have vasectomies.
Yep.
That's causing. Think about this. Think about this negative, evil, feminine energy. Okay. Think of what do women do when they want to insult you? Small dick energy. You know, they go right to your genitals, like right away. They go to the thing that makes us a man and try to castrate us with words, with concepts. What did that asshole on Rule 0 do this week? That fucking pussy said he agreed with a legislator in Georgia that young boys should have reversible vasectomies.
Pam Keith.
Again, the same fucking thing that the radical women, that fucking asshole said the same exact thing as these radical, evil, feminine people that you see all over the media now. He went right for the dick. He went right to your genitals.
I agree. The only thing I disagree with is I don't call it feminine energy, and I don't call these people, these men, these males, feminine. I call them effeminate. I think effeminate is a much more accurate term, because feminine.
Yeah,
energy,
you're right.
When women have feminine energy, it's beautiful. Like, we got to make energy great again, and all that. Like, I'm all about it. That's leading charge.
I stand corrected in that. I agree with that, because you know what feminine energy is? You know, like when you have your velour wolf blanket up with push tacks on the window as a curtain, and you have like a milk crate bookshelf, and you bring a girl over and she says, you know what, this place needs a woman's touch. Now that can go too far too, but the idea of, rather than just putting the box of pizza on the coffee table, she'd rather put the pizza on plates and make a salad for you rather than eating out of the box while you're Netflixing and chilling. Okay. That's the beauty that the feminine can bring into your life.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. Feminine energy really is very creative. It's beautiful. It's soothing. Not to parrot Jennifer, but that very controversial video that she said, where she said, fuck the war out of men. Like, you've been killing people all day long. You're soaked in blood. Okay, come on in. Let me make you dinner. You don't have to kill anyone anymore. You're home. Everything's cool. And you know what? That's really cool. I like that. And I embrace that. And that's the kind of woman that I want in my life. Michael Foster made a statement somewhere. I don't know where it was, in somewhere on video, where even the Bible talks about men being effeminate. Right, Michael?
First Corinthians. Sure. So in 1 Corinthians 6:9, there's 2 words used for homosexuality, and modern translators get it wrong. They think it's pitchers and catchers, right? The guy that's giving, the guy that's taking. Actually, it's malakoi and arsenokoite. Arsenokoite is what we think of as someone that engages in homosexual sex, right? Actually, 2 same sexes. Where malakoi is just effeminacy. So if you're familiar with Jack Donovan will tell you that he is against what he would call like queer culture, or gay culture, or something like that. That's malakoi. Right, that's being effeminate. And so it's hilarious. You read the early church, you'll read guys like Clement. He'll talk about these guys who would shave their beards to try to get baby faces to pick up chicks. Like, Clement's going after these guys. And so he's saying it's effeminate because they're like denying some of their masculine essence or whatever. And so to be effeminate, like for a woman to be feminine, beautiful.
Yes.
Right. But for a cat to bark, that's unusual. Right. That's not. And so I always tell people, my wife is my feminine side. I don't have a feminine side. Like I need a wife because I need that I need feminine energy. I need the feminine in my life. And that's why I get that from my wife. I'm all man all the time. And when you don't act like a man, when you take the posture of a woman, it's very unusual. It's off-putting, and everyone notices right away, and they always have. And it's because effeminate men are women without wombs. They add nothing to the mission. And so all cultures despise effeminate men because the guys, because guys are so outcome oriented and team oriented and hierarchical oriented, because they're like, what, this guy, a woman brings something to the team, right? She brings a lot, but this guy who is a man but acting like a woman, he brings nothing. And so they despise him because he doesn't help. And that's the sort of energy or mindset I see in a lot of these guys, is that they're like the opposite. They want so badly to be a man, but they're not, and they resent the real masculine guys. And it's a shame, because a lot of them are deeply gifted people, and if they could just get over it, a lot of good work could be, a lot of collaboration could happen. And it's the sort of cattiness. I just block them. I don't care. Like these people that are like, oh, your wife looks like she's not sexually satisfied. I'm like, dude, I know the reality of my life. Like these tweets do nothing to me. Like, I don't care, and these folks that some of the commenters you see on these YouTube, like, look, I know who you are. You're like some big fat autistic guy that can't like relate to anyone in the real world. Like, your comments don't hurt me. None of this stuff does. And I hate seeing that. I wish these people would find a way to, put their differences behind us. It's sad to see it, because we do need a coalition right now of people that agree that at least that feminism, tyranny, all these things are enemies that we need to find a way to undermine. But they're effeminate.
I have to laugh when I used to be on like dating websites or like apps and such.
George,
and
sorry to interrupt real quick. I got to head out now. I'm not about to tap that on time.
Okay.
So I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yes,
and
sir.
Thank you, Pat.
We've got a fun month ahead, but I think I'm hoping by the end of the month, but certainly no later than mid-December, we're going to have this whole thing wrapped up. And it's going to be the biggest, I almost feel bad for them. It's going to be the worst month of their lives. So we're,
fuck yeah.
Sometimes my house shakes, and I think, was that an earthquake? And I was like, no, those are Pat Stedman's vibrations.
Pat, thanks for coming on, man. Make
Thank you,
great
Pat.
again, sir.
Love you guys. See ya.
That's right.
All right, boys. I want to close out with one final commentary here. A question from a chat guy today, a few minutes ago. But it also reminded me too. I'll get into it. So I'll read it, and then I have another comment from someone else I follow. So Roman Brodsky says, I assume once Biden drops the ball as president, 2024 will be a change back to Republicans again, but stay that way for a long time. So I don't think this is going to happen, but it did make me, this comment is interesting. And then also, because we could talk about it with some looking at it abstract, but also I've seen even speakers in the manosphere that I generally like. I've seen them have this very, not even pessimistic attitude, but like there's like a defeatist attitude, more distinct than pessimism or optimism or realism or whatever, like defeatist stuff. And it's the defeatist attitude that, everything's going to be okay. Don't worry about what happens. It'll all work itself out. America will survive no matter what. It's always survived. It's like, motherfucker, do you think that shit goes on indefinitely? Do you think you have an infinite number of times you can have a deep state and an establishment take over the country and drive it further and further and further into debt and further and further and further into war and all this fucking shit? Like, it's fucking nuts. Like, the last time America had a Great Depression, we had like almost no debt. Now we're pushing $27 trillion in debt or something. The country in total, including unfunded liabilities, is pushing $200 trillion. I mean, you had the Speaker of the House, the nasty woman Nancy Pelosi, talking about a digital dollar, which is a push for digital currency and to erase cash, which is a push for one world currency and one world government. That's where all the shit's heading. I think what they really want is to close down the American economy completely, like they're doing in Europe, to not just hurt it, but to collapse it, to collapse the economy, to give everyone UBI, and to just do insane, like super. Just like 2020 has been a slippery slope of fucking tyranny. They want to escalate that and increase that. I don't think there'll be a 2024 election. That's why I'm looking at this and I'm like, do you think that goes on indefinitely? You're going to have a banana republic with a powerful country with nukes and shit? and you know the world's just going to sit around and watch. China's just going to hang out and all this shit. Like, what do you think is going to happen? How many times can you have a general election stolen from a sitting president and the country doesn't fucking collapse? The economy doesn't collapse. They don't crash the stock market on purpose to fucking fuck everything up. Like, this is fucking, that shit does. Anyway, it just kind of, it pisses me off and riles me up when you see people who pretend to be masculine and all this shit. And it's like, oh, it's going to be fine. You know, it's always work itself out. It's like, no, it doesn't. It doesn't work itself out indefinitely. At some point, Rome falls. And we're getting there rapidly. We're seeing the transgender stuff. We're seeing, the normalization of pedophilia, all this fucking shit. Everything the Christians were bitching about in 2000 with Pat Buchanan and shit is coming true. All of it. Every fucking bit of it. And now we're facing, all this crap. So anyway, I thought I'd pull this comment up and see if you guys want to riff on this a little bit. Thoughts on this comment, thoughts on what I just said.
There's a last time for everything. Everyone's going to eat a last meal. Everyone's going to have a last haircut. There's going to be a last shower. There's going to be a last election. There's a last time for everything. This is not going to last forever. Prosperity doesn't last forever if you don't do something about it. There's always something you have to fight, and you just have to stay vigilant. I agree with you, Anthony, on that it's not just going to get better by itself. It's not going to equalize. It's not going to find its own level. It's not going to happen. Every bit of freedom
just give up your guns. It's going to be fine. Don't worry. It'll work itself out. Just give up your guns, dude.
Every bit of freedom that we have is the result of someone's hard work or blood. Period. Nothing is free. Absolutely nothing.
I mean, what I would say is, I was actually talking to a good friend about the problem of money, right? That money has no inherent value. It's a fiat currency, right? And so assets have real value. And I was telling him, we're just talking about like what happens when our money inflates or deflates or whatever. And his whole mindset was based on the last like 40 years or like the last 50 years. And I'm like, look, that's a drop in the bucket, man. Like you are assuming that this system is going to continue exactly how it has just for the last 40 years, where, there was a time when there was an income tax. There was a time when there was a gold standard. There was a time where there wasn't a huge welfare state. That was FDR that created that. There was a time where states were closer to countries than they were the administrative states that we see now. That's all they really are. Yeah. These things, there's been rapid changes in America, and everyone acts like that those changes aren't going to continue, and they're not going to continue in a particular direction that they've gone, which is increasingly federal, increasingly fake in terms of our economy, right? Propped up by all sorts of manipulations and fiat currency.
Fake money.
Yeah, it's just not real. Like, you have to have assets. That's, one day if they decide that they're not going to pay on their bonds, you're in real trouble. It's going to change everything. And don't think that our competing nations don't realize that how vulnerable we are. They just have to. It's mostly because USD is a reserve currency for China right now that's propping us up for the moment. But that could change. Who knows? So I think it's weird that folks just assume that things are going to continue as they have. I'll also say this. I was talking to someone asked this in the chat about sort of the black pill mindset. And they're telling me all this research, like women are the worst they've ever been. It's going to continue on this line, and here's where society is going to go. If all things remain equal, you can make predictions like that, but history is full of big surprises. I was reading about in 1416 that basically there was a prolonged winter because there was 3 major volcanic eruptions that covered the sun. You couldn't even see the moon at night, and it killed all these crops, and it changed everything. And this is right around the time of Black Plague. There's so many things that happen in history that we can't predict.
Black swan events is what they're called.
Yeah, black swan events, exactly. Yeah. And so folks, a lot of these guys, because they live in the theoretic, they think they can plot this out, and they let that control their attitude. And that's a huge part of the problem that we're having right now with people's mindsets, is that they think they know what's going to happen, and we really don't fully know what's going to happen.
I think what you're getting at is that they're offloading personal responsibility for the future of the country, their small part in it, or whatever part that they have. they're offloading it to history and just sheer momentum, like this blind belief out of fear or paranoia, like, oh, it's going to be fine, doesn't matter what happens, it's another election, blah blah blah. It's like, no, you have personal responsibility in it, and at some point it will come knocking at your front door.
Exactly. It's two sides of the same coin, right? It doesn't matter. It's all going to work out. I don't have to do anything. Oh, there's nothing we can do. It's all going to hell. It's inevitable. I don't have to do anything, right? Like the coin is, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to get involved. It's hopeless. And I don't believe that. I actually think that that actions have we can have victory. We can win in personal life, national life, ecclesiastical life. That God rewards the hands of the diligent. You know, I believe that the things we do actually have. And these guys, though, I think a lot of them just haven't won at anything. Like, it's amazing. If you've ever won, like, one of my favorite wrestling matches was when I wrestled in high school. I was totally not supposed to beat this guy. And I was like in over my head, and I pinned him. And when I pinned him, I realized, I'm a force to be reckoned with. I can actually do this. And these guys just need to taste a little bit of victory and like let that thing snowball. And we actually can, but not if you have this defeatist mentality that uses your limited understanding of history to keep you from taking action. And I think that's to be a masculine man is to be a man of action, to not just be hearers of the word, but to be doers of the word, to get things done.
Yep. All right,
yeah,
guys,
I agree.
go ahead, George.
Yeah, I even saw bumper stickers and memes that said "Asteroid 2020."
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Just like, give it up, like, let asteroid come quickly, and then it would end everything. Or the other thing would be Trump is what winning looks like. Remember the hashtag winning? Was that a Charlie Sheen thing? Winning. Remember that?
Yeah. Yep.
And I don't think that conservatives or Republicans or freedom lovers have completely defined. If you talk to 10 people what freedom or what winning looks like, you're going to get 20 different answers. I think they need to get into a big room and say, okay, what does winning look like? Is Trump in the White House? Does that mean winning? The last 4 years have been very stressful with Trump. Even though when I wake up in the morning, I love it when I wake up and Trump is president. I love that. But it has been stressful. And I think it's this in the past 4 years, that was one of the reasons why I shut off the media completely, 100%, and don't watch TV. And I'm so unplugged from it. And I just feel great, and I'm very positive and optimistic about everything. But what does winning look like? I think winning is when we are making a lot of money, taking care of our family. We have little government interference. I want government to be afraid of me instead of me being afraid of my government. Right now, everyone's afraid of the government. Simple as that.
Yeah. I think winning is freedom. Like real individual rights, hardcore Declaration of Independence, freedom, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, the right to own property, the right to defend yourself, freedom, 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 freedom. None of this negative, this positive freedom crap, the freedom to not, be poor, the freedom not to be hungry, all this bullshit the FDR tried getting in with his Bill of Rights that he made up in the 30s or whatever. Yeah, so to me, winning is freedom. True, no bullshit, zero compromise, freedom. And Trump has been a major push in that direction. Ron Paul, I think, set the stage in 2008 and 2012 for these ideas to be more popular outside of like hardcore libertarian circles and infect the Republican Party in a positive way. Rand Paul has been carrying that torch intellectually, but Trump has done stuff in his own boisterous way that's just been badass. And I want to see it continue, and I hope it does. I think it's just going to happen. People underestimate Trump consistently for decades, and they consistently have the pie thrown in their face at the end of the day. So the people who doubt him, I know they'll just throw it back at us, but I really think they're setting themselves up for a massive, freak out and scream fest in a couple weeks. And let's see what happens. I think that's why, they're pushing so hard against the Supreme Court judge. They didn't expect that to happen at the last minute, and son of a bitch, it did. And here we are, and let's see what happens. I think we're going to round out the show. It's been a little 2 hours now. Any final comments, gentlemen?
It's been good.
Yeah, it's been awesome conversation. All right. Well, let's say we'll round out the episode today then. Thank you, George Bruno. Thank you, Michael Foster. Thanks earlier to Steve Burley and Pat Stedman. We'll see everybody next week on the Redman Group, episode 125, Saturday, probably 11:30, 12 p.m., something like that. Peace out. See you next week. God bless America. God bless the Manosphere. Keep America great.